the first time you won, became AG of Minnesota, it was, we call it a landslide, much the way your congressional runs have been, as the first Black person and first Muslim in a state that is, like, overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly not Muslim. Speaks to your character. I know how you did it. I know about you being in the community. I know about you and Paul
Yeah,
Wellstone, and I know about how you touch people and knock on doors and see folk. But this
sure.
time around, you got a little bit of that backlash for fighting for George Floyd. It feels like people didn't come out to vote for you because you had the audacity to hold those police officers accountable. So it makes you look anti-police. I guess your opponents would put you in that category.
That's what, well, actually, I got more votes this time than I even got the first time.
Okay.
But my opponent got a lot more votes than my prior opponent got.
Got it. So your
So,
winning margin was slimmer.
well, yeah, and we still
Okay.
won, but I
Yes.
won by about 100,000 votes the first time and about 20,000 votes the second time. And much of the and the spending in the second one was a lot higher, and the accusations were uglier. And one of the things they said is that I'm anti-police. I'm absolutely not anti-police. I have a great relationship with a lot of police officers who I respect and admire and thank for the great work that they do. But, there were some others who, if you say this is a tragic situation and, there needs to be reform, they take that as a personal affront to themselves, So, for example, like the police union spent $300,000 to try to defeat me, all saying I'm anti-cop. Well, I had cops who were
Wait. The
endorsing mine.
police union had $300,000 of the police officers' money to try to defeat you. They used
Yeah.
that money to defeat you.
Right. They tried to, and they didn't. But
Right.
I mean, look,
Crazy.
but let me tell you, I've even talked to them and said, look, we both, you say you're about public safety. I'm certainly about public safety. Let's work on public safety together. Because, but I will say that, it's wrong. I'll tell you this, Karen, I worked really hard on this last election because I didn't want it to be said that if you hold a killer accountable, a murderer, Derek Chauvin was found guilty of murder. If you hold a murderer accountable, that you might end up losing your office, because I can't have prosecutors worried about seeking justice. I need them to know that if you do the right thing the right way, then you can be returned to office, right? Now, it might be tougher, you might have to work harder, but it is worth it. I have absolutely no regrets. And I completely reject this anti-cop thing they tried to accuse me of. And they had one ad that was like, bring, this is a Minnesota correctional facility. It wasn't. And then the person says, hey, you should support us crooks because Ellison hates cops like we do. And I'm like, first of all, in Minnesota, if you're in custody in prison, you can't vote anyway. Your civil rights are taken away. Second of all, they use video of a carjacking that happened in Miami, that didn't even happen in Minnesota. It was just lies. And even the mainstream press had to say, this is not true. And so, what I want to say to anyone who's running is that, look, it is important to make sure we have equal justice, including for officers who put their lives on the line. We got to honor the people who are trying to do the job right. And Carrie O'Horn's not the only one doing the job right. There's a guy named Rick Zimmerman who testified in the Floyd trial that said that is wrong. We don't police that way. And I'm here to say that, that this is a wrong thing. And there's a bunch of officers who wrote an open letter condemning what Derek Chauvin did. And, some folks, like these folks who were criticizing me, they think that I'm the reason that people don't, that recruiting is more difficult than it used to be in policing. Well, recruiting is more difficult everywhere in all professions, but I'm not the reason that recruiting is harder. Derek Chauvin is. Right. And what we should all be doing is saying that conduct is unacceptable, and we demand a higher quality of service than that, as opposed to let's get after the person who convicted Derek Chauvin.
What does it say about a society that deflects responsibility, that is unwilling to be accountable? I feel like we're in a nation that no one wants to be accountable for anything, right? So it's a lot easier to deflect. So it's that person's fault. It's the Mexicans, the Black people. It's Keith Ellison, but not look in the mirror and say this behavior does not reflect human behavior. Not even being an American. Let's remove that. Not even this is not the way human beings should behave, and everyone should be in agreement that it's wrong to kneel on somebody's neck for 9 minutes and 26 seconds and kill them for a $20 for a counterfeit bill that he didn't even know was counterfeit. And even if he knew it wasn't a deadly weapon. Even if he knew he was passing a $20 counterfeit bill, that is not a national, to me, that is not undermining our national security. That is not putting anybody's life in jeopardy. It's $20. No, we don't want people to steal. We don't want, counterfeit bills in circulation. But is it worth his life?
Absolutely not. And I just want to say that, look, George Floyd's life was infinitely valuable. He took a trashing himself after he was killed. It's true that he suffered from addiction. So do literally millions of Americans of all backgrounds, by the way. And but they act like, well, because he had fentanyl in his system, that his life wasn't worth living. People recover every single day. I mean, George, you don't know what George Floyd would have been if he'd have been given a chance to live. And, I'm going to tell you this. If you look at the video, George Floyd never curses the cops. He never insults them. He's calling them Mr. Officer, please, I can't breathe. Mr. Officer, please. He tells them, I have anxiety. I have claustrophobia. Since I didn't do a violent crime, can I just wait near the curb? No, you're getting in the car. And so he goes, okay, I'm getting in. Just give me, I'm gonna count to 3 and I'm gonna try to get in. He seems classically anxious. And you don't know what happened to him. He went through a lot of very difficult things in his life. And so they had no compassion for the man. It was tough. But I tell you another thing that was tough is that we as a society have not even passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I'm hoping that the Congress will pass this law. It will not hurt great cops who are trying to do a good job. It'll
help. Just tell us what's in it so that folk are informed.
Yeah. Well, it's a bill with a lot of things in it. But what I will do is just mention that a few things that I'd like to see in it. One is that if you want to charge a police officer with a federal crime for violating somebody's civil rights, you should have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they, intentionally violated civil rights, because crimes are intentional. Now you got it, but now the standard is something like willful, which is like, it's just too high a standard. Now these guys were found guilty of it in federal district court here in Minnesota, but I just think that it deals with that standard, that nearly impossible, standard. And then the other thing that it does is it sets up a national registry, which I think is extremely important because, if you look at the murder of Tamir Rice was 12 years old. Somebody said there's a kid who looks like he might have a gun, but I think it's a toy, right? That's what the caller said. Mm-hmm. The guy, Officer Lowen, who walked up and shot him, he had been already rejected from another police department because of mental unfitness, right? So the bottom line is that if you had a national registry, bad cops couldn't go from one department to the other, right? And then, it actually changes the law on qualified immunity. Now, a lot of people, this is a difficult to understand concept, but it's the legal principle that shields government employees, including officers, from civil liability. But what it says is that if there was not another case almost exactly like this, then the officer doesn't even have to answer questions in discovery, with interrogatories and depositions. You can win on a motion for dismissal, even if there's a rule that says you can't do it, even if you say there's a law that's against it. If it hasn't happened before, they're not somehow on notice. And so that needs to be amended. because that is not fair and is clearly unjust. And so there's a number of provisions in it, but the most important provision is that by passing it, it shows that Congress, the majority of the elected representatives in our Congress, recognize the problem and want to do something about it. That is very important. And so there's a number of things. I mean, the fact that a lot of states have done things, a lot of cities have done things, a lot of counties have done things, but
this should be federal.
It should be federal.
Well, this Congress is not the Congress that you were even in. You were in a Congress with Paul Ryan.
True.
No,
it's true.
This Congress is different. They're not interested in reaching across the aisle or doing what's best for the majority of Americans.
No,
they are fundraising constantly by divisive behavior. This is throwing out red meat to their constituents and gaslighting the rest of us. I don't think it's going to happen, because it requires some Republicans to either abstain or to vote for it. And then they have to go home and try to get elected in a heavily gerrymandered, district, probably. You know what I'm saying? They have to appeal to the racists in their counties.
You're right. But let me just tell you this. First of all, I've talked to a lot of Republicans who believe in the basic idea that arbitrary government force from government agencies is wrong. And I think that if Republicans voted for this, they would not be run out of they would not lose their offices. In fact, they'd actually improve the quality of people's civil rights, including their own constituents. But I think that there will come a day, given the behavior of this Congress, where the American people are going to put them in the minority, the Republicans, and we'll have another chance. I mean, I'm going to tell you, in the Minnesota state legislature, we've had many years where we had the Republican governor, or one house was Republican or another one was. This time, because of bad Republican conduct, we got Dems in the House, Senate, and the governor's office, and me. And so we were able to pass some, what I think is great legislation. That moment is coming. We cannot wait until that moment comes to say, hey, let's pass some good legislation. We've got to work for it. And so I think that, it would be good for people who are listening to your show to say, look, if some folks are Democrats, some folks are Republicans, but the ones who say, I'm not sure, I say, ask whoever is trying to get your vote, whether they support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Ask them that. And if you really want to know all about it, read the book, Break the Wheel.
Right. I was going to say, you break it down, literally. Break the Wheel gives a civics lesson on what each of these offices. So if you want to know the role of a prosecutor, if you want to know what defendants, the heads of police unions do, if you want to know what judges and activists and legislators and how they work together, if you want to understand how your justice system in your particular state is working, Break the Wheel. Keith Ellison actually breaks it down. So you do a great job in delivering civics lessons, which we so desperately need in the midst of the narrative around, the killing of George Floyd and all the other injustices that have happened in your state that you have personally been involved with. Why was that important to put the civics in the explanations in here?
Because I want people to understand how our country works, how our judicial system works, how our legal system works, how it works and how it doesn't work. Because if you don't really know how it works, then it's easy to say it's perfect or it's sus. You know what I'm saying? And people people who say both, right, Karen? The truth is, it works sometimes for some people and it don't work other times for other people. If you know more about it, you can make it work for you. And so, for example, when I led this prosecution, I understood enough about the legal system to put on a successful case. Now, other folks can't say it can't be done. It can be done, right? And if anybody, and I'll tell you, I can watch a prosecution where the prosecutor don't want to prosecute. I can tell, right? Certain witnesses they put on, lack of preparation. And I'm just going to tell you, whenever you see, if heaven forbid another tragic incident happens, but when it does, look at how much elbow grease you see being exerted, and that'll tell you whether they're looking for a prosecution or conviction or not. Now, again, All defendants are presumed innocent until they're convicted. All of that. But I just want to say, you see something that looks really wrong to you, it is prosecutable. You can get a conviction if the prosecutor tries to. But when you see like Eric Garner, there was not even an indictment.
No.
Right.
Or even Breonna Taylor. I don't think
Breonna Taylor, same thing. So many others, where the person there was never any accountability. I mean, don't just only blame the police,
right.
Prosecutors, judges, the media, medical examiners, all these people, if they work properly, they can bring about justice. If they don't want to, they're not going to. So it's important for the public to know that. So that's why I wrote the book. The book is important. I mean, I wrote this book called Freddie's Last Ride. I read a book called Freddie's Last Ride, which is about the murder of Freddie Gray. And one of the things that the book made clear is that dealing with the medical causation is very important. If you want to win a case like that, you got to make sure that you get the medical causation right. A lot of the defense attorneys in the Freddie Gray case pointed out that it wasn't clear who killed him and where he died, because his back might have been broke when they put him in the police van. And so was it in before? Was it after? That question alone is reasonable doubt. And so I knew, hey, we got to keep medical causation extremely tight.
Yes.
Right. And so it's 1, 2, 3, bam. So that's we got to lay it out to the jury just like that.
All right, before I let you go, Break the Wheel is the book. Utopia. All right. There's a brand new town incorporated. Sure. Right. I love it. Let's call it Hunterville. Let's call it Nubia. Let's call it Nubia. Right. Well, beautiful town, lots of land.
Let's call it the Twin Cities of Hunterville, Nubia.
Okay. I prefer to keep my name out of it. All right. So we'll call it Nubia just because it's just a beautiful name. Yeah. Land, everything. People, because you got to have people, right? So people they're going to come. Like, imagine O.W. Gurley, we got Robert Church sending people into this beautiful place. We need to have defense. We need to have defense because, people get jealous when you build greatness because it's going to be great, right? So we're going to have some sort of Star Wars system because I'm going to use technology, AI. We got drones, make sure ain't nobody coming in acting greasy. What does policing look like in 2025 in this new incorporated town of great people? But, when people come, they bring their trauma and their drama with them. What does it look like?
So if people are still people, and we know people, then some of them will commit murders. Most of them won't. Some of them will. Right. Some of them will commit rape. Most of them won't. Some of them will. They will commit crimes against persons and financial exploitations, environmental abuses. People are going to do bad things. Right. People things. So my thing, we start from the ground up, building our police department, our criminal justice system. We first say, if you're going to be working in law enforcement, let's hire some people who may carry guns in case there's an active shooter in the high school, but other people, they may not know nothing about carrying guns. Maybe they're good at dealing with people who are dealing with traumatic crimes that happen to them. And what these officers do is help people give a story, explain, they help people explain what traumatic thing happened to them so there can be some sort of accountability and investigation. And then maybe
more of like a social worker that has, CSI skills.
Right. Or maybe somebody who's really great at following paper and computers who knows about financial exploitation, right? But let's not say that all of our cops they're really good at carrying guns and shooting people who they're mad at, but they're not so good at, other stuff, right? We need a diverse police department that has skills doing a wide range of things. Let's do that. Let's also believe in second chances. If somebody is a first offender, or let's say that if you have a drug problem, we're going to treat it like a health problem, like it is. Let's say that let's do that. Let's say that if human beings are human beings as we know them to be, let's say that there should be some second chances. let's say that there needs to be some opportunities to redeem yourself. And let's say that we're going to have a safe community. And I think that's where we should go now. You know, I'm not one who thinks we don't need police. I do think we do. I've seen I'm a defense lawyer and a prosecutor. I know we need them, but we need them to be constitutional. We need them to be fair. We need them to be respectful of people's rights, and we need them to be effective at law enforcement. And we know they need our support and our trust. Let's do it. We can break that will.